Some stories don't just get told. They stay with you, like a girl who stopped speaking after the fire, and the dog who found her in the cold and refused to let her go. If you believe in second chances and silent heroes, subscribe now and stay for the stories that remind us. Sometimes rescue comes on 4 legs. The river was colder than the night. Dark water pulled at the little girl's coat as she clung to a half-submerged branch, her arms too tired to scream anymore. She had fallen from the old rail bridge. Or maybe she had jumped. Even she didn't know anymore. All she knew was this. She didn't want to die. Not like this. Not alone. But no one was coming. Until something hit the water upstream. Heavy. Fast. A splash. Then silence. Then movement. Through the mist and moonlight, a shape surged through the water, fur slicked back, muscles working against the current. A dog, huge, focused, relentless. He reached her, bit down on her jacket, not to hurt, but to hold. And he swam, against the current, against the weight of her soaked body, against time itself. When they reached the shore, she collapsed into his side, gasping. The dog stood guard over her like a statue, chest heaving, eyes scanning the trees. He didn't know who she was, but something in her eyes matched something in his, and that was enough. Her name was Sophie, 10 years old, too quiet for her age, too still for a child who used to sing while brushing her hair. She hadn't spoken in 42 days, not since the fire. The official report said it was electrical, faulty wiring in the hallway. But Sophie remembered every sound, the first pop, the hiss, the way the walls seemed to breathe and smoke before exhaling flame. She remembered the shouting, the hands that pushed her toward the door, her father's voice behind her. "I'll be right behind you." But he wasn't. He never made it out. Since then, Sophie lived with her grandmother, a good woman, kind, but heavy with grief of her own. The house was small and smelled like lavender and old photographs. There were no songs, no bedtime stories, no mention of Sophie's father, just silence. And Sophie clung to it like armor. At school, she didn't speak. At home, she stared at the ceiling. In the yard, she sat beneath the maple tree and traced invisible flames in the dirt with a stick. Until one day, on a walk she wasn't supposed to take, to a bridge she wasn't supposed to cross, something cracked inside her. She didn't want to die. Not really. But she didn't want to feel this empty either. So when the branch snapped beneath her feet and the water swallowed her scream, she didn't fight. Not until he came. They called him Valor, K9 Unit Number 037, German Shepherd, 6 years of active duty, multiple deployments, 0 failures. He was known for precision, for speed, for courage that bordered on reckless. But what made him different was what happened after the missions. Valor didn't return to the kennels like the others. He paced, restless, eyes locked on the horizon like he was still chasing something he couldn't reach. His handler, Officer Daniels, once said, "He's got a heart too big for his vest." But then came the ambush. A drug raid gone wrong. A bullet through the dark. A scream. A howl. Daniels didn't make it. Valor dragged his body 6 meters to cover, held the line until backup arrived. They called it loyalty. Valor called it failure. After that night, he stopped working, stopped eating, stopped being. The department retired him early, declared him unfit for service, sent him to a temporary foster program while they searched for a long-term home. But Valor didn't wait. He ran, vanished into the woods 3 days before he was scheduled to be transferred. Most assumed he wouldn't last. Some said he'd go wild. Others believed he'd return to the scene of the raid. Dogs remember more than we think. But he didn't go back. Instead, he found a bridge and a little girl who reminded him too much of the man he couldn't save. Sophie lay curled on the riverbank, her soaked hair clinging to her cheeks, shivering from more than just the cold. Valor stood beside her, alert, still dripping, eyes fixed on the shadows. Not once did he bark. Not once did he move away. He waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Sophie tried to sit up, but pain shot through her shoulder. She winced. Valor stepped forward, nudged her gently with his nose. She flinched, then froze. He backed up, sat, waited again. Sophie stared at him. No collar, no tags, no leash. Just those amber eyes watching her like she mattered, like she wasn't broken. With trembling fingers, she reached out. He didn't move. Then, her hand touched fur. Warm, solid, real. Tears welled up, spilling silently down her cheeks. Not from fear, not even sadness, from recognition. She whispered, barely audible, "Thank you." It was the first word she had spoken in over 6 weeks. Valor leaned closer and rested his head in her lap. When the rescue team found her, Sophie was huddled beneath Valor's chest, half-conscious, hypothermic, but alive. They rushed her to the hospital. No one knew where the dog had come from. He followed the ambulance on foot, 5 miles, without stopping. At the ER entrance, they tried to hold him back. He growled once, deep, not hostile, but anchored. A nurse whispered, "Let him stay. He's not leaving her." So they let him curl at the foot of her bed. Sophie woke to beeping monitors, pale curtains, and fur against her toes. She didn't speak, just reached down and rested her hand on Valor's head. 2 days later, a social worker came to speak with her grandmother. A behavioral therapist entered the room, suggested play therapy, art classes, even animal-assisted rehabilitation. "She's not speaking yet," they said. But Sophie was already drawing, on page after page. A big dog with a proud chest and tired eyes, a girl, a river. A second chance. The department came to collect Valor. He was technically missing canine property. But when the officer approached Sophie's bed, she shook her head fiercely and clung to his fur. Valor didn't growl this time. He didn't have to. The look in Sophie's eyes was louder than any bark. He arrived quietly. No badge, no uniform, just worn boots and eyes that had seen war, and worse. His name was Eli Parker, retired canine trainer. He didn't ask permission. He just walked into Sophie's hospital room, nodded at the nurses, and stood beside Valor. "You didn't forget, did you?" he whispered. Valor looked up. No bark, no wag, just stillness, recognition. Sophie watched them both, arms wrapped around her sketch pad. Eli turned to her. "You know what he is, don't you?" Sophie nodded slowly. "He's mine." Eli smiled. "Before he was yours, he was mine. I trained him before his first deployment, before his first loss." He knelt beside Valor, running a hand along his spine. "He doesn't attach easily, but when he does, he never lets go." He looked back at Sophie. "They said he went rogue, that he couldn't be trusted anymore." Sophie's grip on her sketch pad tightened. "They're wrong." Eli nodded. "I know." He sat across from her and lowered his voice. "I've seen a lot of soldiers come back broken. But Valor, he wasn't broken. He was searching for someone who needed him the way he needed to matter again." Silence. Then Eli reached into his coat, pulled out a small worn collar tag, set it on Sophie's bed. It read, "Canine Valor, honor in silence. If he chooses to stay, let him." The hospital released Sophie with a prescription for nightmares and a warning about emotional setbacks. She walked out without saying a word, but with Valor at her side, leashless, proud. At home, her grandmother tried to keep rules. No dogs on furniture, no animals at the table. But by the second night, Valor was sleeping beside Sophie. By the third, he was finishing her toast crusts. By the fourth, her grandmother stopped pretending. One afternoon, a knock came at the door. 2 officers in pressed uniforms. One carried paperwork. The other had a file. "We've come for the dog." Sophie froze. Valor stepped between her and the door. "He's department property," one officer said. "We can't make exceptions." Sophie stared at them, eyes steady, back straight, then turned, disappeared down the hall, and returned with a stack of drawings. Dozens of pages, each one with the same thing. A girl, a dog, a river, and a single word written in crayon at the bottom of every page: "Stay." She didn't plead, didn't cry. She just stood there, arms outstretched. The officers were quiet. One cleared his throat. "We'll discuss with the department." They left empty-handed. Valor lay down at Sophie's feet. That night a call came in. "The dog stays." Winter melted into spring. Sophie began humming again. Not loud, not often, but enough to make the silence less heavy. Every morning, Valor walked her to school. Every afternoon, he was waiting, same spot, same time. Her classmates stopped whispering. One day, she stood in front of the class during show and tell, holding a crumpled drawing. She pointed to the black and tan dog beside her. "This is Valor. He saved me when I didn't want to be saved." No one spoke. Then a boy in the back raised his hand. "Can I pet him?" Sophie looked at Valor. He didn't move. Then she smiled. "Only if he says it's okay." At night, Sophie no longer dreamed of fire. She dreamed of rivers, of bridges, of swimming beside someone who never let go. Her grandmother watched quietly as the girl who once traced flames into the dirt now planted wildflowers in their place. One morning, as Sophie and Valor sat under the maple tree, she whispered, "You came when I needed saving, but I think you needed it too." Valor leaned into her shoulder, didn't move, didn't need to. By summer, Sophie had found her voice, not all at once, but like sunlight creeping back after a storm. She joined the school's reading circle, not to read, at first, just to sit with Valor curled at her feet. Soon she began whispering stories to him, then to her classmates, then to herself, out loud. She wrote a short essay for a school project, "What Courage Looks Like." It began, "Courage is a dog who doesn't leave, even when everyone else does." The essay made it to the local paper. A photo was taken. Sophie, sitting beneath the maple tree, Valor beside her, one paw over her shoe. Neighbors waved when they passed. Some stopped to say thank you. Some left dog treats on the porch railing. But Sophie didn't seek attention. She only wanted quiet. The kind that felt like peace, not emptiness. She and Valor began visiting the local children's hospital. They sat with kids too scared to sleep, too sick to smile. Sophie didn't speak much, but Valor didn't need words. He simply stayed. And sometimes that was enough. Sophie used to count the seconds in silence. Now she counted smiles. At the hospital, she began reading books aloud. Her voice still shook sometimes, but Valor would nudge her knee, grounding her like a lighthouse in a storm. One boy, bald from chemo, asked, "Is he your dog?" Sophie smiled. "No, I'm his." She designed flyers for a new program at school. Silent Strength, Reading with Valor. Each flyer had her crayon drawing, a dog standing still while a girl found her voice beside him. Teachers noticed. So did parents. So did the community. But Sophie didn't care about recognition. She cared about the kids who couldn't speak, the ones who felt like they'd disappeared, like she once did. And Valor? He stayed by her side, older now, slower, but still watching, still listening, still hers. One evening, her grandmother asked, "Do you still think about that day by the river?" Sophie nodded. "Every day." "And what do you think now?" She looked at Valor, curled on the porch in fading sunlight. "That I didn't fall by accident. I think he was meant to catch me." Some rescues don't start with sirens. They start with silence, with a stare, with a paw that stays when the world walks away. Valor wasn't just a retired canine. He was proof that loyalty doesn't end with a badge, that some protectors never stop watching, never stop showing up. And Sophie? She wasn't just a girl who nearly let go. She became the reason someone else held on. Together, they reminded the world that healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's curled up beside you. Sometimes it's a dog. Because in the spaces where words fail, where hearts break, where hope flickers, there are those who stay, not to fix you, not to lead you, just to be with you until you can walk again. And sometimes that's what saves your life, Art.